You are listening to Unified Through Chronic and Mental Illness with your hosts, Angie Roberts and Kimberly Murphy. Please be advised that some of the topics of this podcast can be triggering and sensitive in nature.
The Mayo Clinic says there are more than 3 million cases of chronic pain in the U.S. every year. Hey guys, welcome to Unified. This is Angie, and today's topic is chronic pain. Cleveland Clinic says chronic pain is pain that is ongoing and usually lasts longer than 6 months. People may experience pain in the back, joints, mouth and face, muscles and bones or neck. Pain can be caused by psychological factors. People may experience depression, anxiety, fatigue, headaches, or sleep deprivation. Some types of treatment listed on WebMD are trigger point injections, TENS units, physical therapy, psychological treatment, chiropractic treatment, which is Angie's favorite, vitamins, and exercise.
So, Angie, when did chronic pain become a factor in your life?
I kind of always had issues since I was really little, like before I can even remember. And my legs would burn real deep and I would be sick a lot from school. And the doctors, of course, they would say there was nothing wrong with me and I needed to go to school and all that stuff. A lot of it, it's hard to kind of say what was chronic illness and what was actually mental illness, but we do know that they are the same thing. Mental illness is, a chronic illness. So sometimes it shows itself physically. Luckily, when I was about 14, I needed to go to the doctor because I was missing school again and I was in a lot of pain. And my mom's doctor was the one that actually seen me, not my doctor. And I'm guessing he had just been to a seminar or something. He knew, it was like he knew really quickly what it was. He just, he did the trigger point test and all that stuff. And he said, "You have fibromyalgia." And we're looking at him like, what? What? And so, he explained it a little bit. And before that time, people really didn't know what it was, and we did not have the knowledge that we have now. But he was one of the only doctors that in our area that really believed in it at that time. So I was pretty lucky just to so happened to have an appointment with him. They gave me tramadol, and that didn't really work. They had already been giving me ibuprofen and Aleve and all that stuff. And of course, they told me to move more, and it at that time I was a teenager. I was moving a lot. I was in band. And I know some people don't think it's moving a lot, but you didn't have Mr. Nelson as your band teacher. So you didn't have the calisthenics on the parking lot. Trust me. Uh-huh. But I remember a lot of mornings just trying to go to school, but I couldn't go to school. I was in a lot of pain and exhausted, and I just couldn't get out of bed. Luckily, my mom didn't have to really pay much for that. Like now, they're really on people about their kids not going to school or whatever. But I did graduate, so that was good.
Well, that's good.
I know, that is a plus.
Well, it's hard when you're sick all the time,
It really is. It felt really hard in my late 20s is when I think that it really, really hit me hard. That's when I moved to Detroit too. So the climate change, I think I was living in the South, and then I come up here and the climate change and everything has been really different for me and really difficult on me. So
it's triggered by cold a lot, right? The cold is
yeah, it really does. It just hurts all the way to the bone. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing chiropractic treatments because I was doing medicine, but I don't like I didn't like, it's so hard to get medicine. It's crazy. I started doing the chiropractic treatments, and I found that I could walk into the chiropractor and be in a lot of pain and walk out of the chiropractor and literally not be in hardly any pain. So I found that worked good for me. It doesn't, like, I'm going to tell you, the first 3 or 4 trips, you're going to get a flare the next day, but you keep going and you keep doing it, and your body needs to be in place, and it's part of the problem.
How often do you need to do it?
Usually people go either twice a week or once a week. I go once a week, and that seems to work well.
See, now, the funny thing is that I'm hearing you say all this, and I can't help but hear my mother's voice in my head, who's telling me that the chiropractor is a really dangerous place to go, and that they can completely mess you up. And she said something about if they do something wrong with the neck, it can affect your heart. And I mean, she's got all these horror stories. So
Right. Well, I mean, I think that a physical doctor can do the same thing to you. So do your research into the chiropractor. Do your research. That's all I gotta say. Find a chiropractor that has a long time standing of, good care. But I have never heard of that actually happening.
okay, so you did just touch on chronic pain and the medications a little bit. And I'm guessing that part of the reason you didn't want to go that route is because it's so hard to get it. They make you jump through major hoops, and it's getting to the point where it's not even possible to get the treatment that we should be getting, that we're entitled to have. Because of this new epidemic, which I'm going to talk about in a second, 41% of doctors are refusing pain patients flat out. And WebMD actually says that 8.8% of suicides are linked to chronic pain. And I'm sure that number is rising quickly.
I'm sure it is too.
Yeah, what basically happened, and I think Florida actually had a lot to do with this, because Florida was one of the worst states. We had pill mills on every corner. People were coming down to the state in order to purchase oxycodone, things of that nature, and bring it back to their states. It was really easy to get here. You could get multiple prescriptions at multiple places, turn around and sell them or abuse them or whatever. So that was happening. And it caused this huge reaction, of course, in the war against drugs. The pill mills were shut down. They started a new way of tracking who you were getting your prescriptions from, so you can only get one, which is good. All that is positive. The problem is that the doctors are now afraid to prescribe at all. The Center of Disease Control issued a warning saying that, doctors could be prosecuted for overprescribing if they were to give an amount of medication that was deemed higher than the regulations that they put out. And a lot of doctors were forced to just cut their patients down to lower levels, which was doing damage, of course. There were people that were on higher doses for years and taking their medication appropriately, who are now cut down in half. The doctors were becoming more and more afraid, as other doctors were actually doing years in prison because they refused to cut the medication down and thought that they were doing an appropriate treatment for their patients, which, most people believe they were. The doctors believed they were. So it causes real issue. And I mean, what turned out to be the DEA, basically, I think, wanting all of these drugs to be tracked really well and not abused and not overprescribed and not sold, it actually turned against chronic pain patients who now can't get prescribed anything by a regular doctor. And so they all got turned to pain clinics.
And pain clinics are horrible. I mean, they're not horrible. It's just, it takes so long to get what you need.
Absolutely. And a lot of them are not even prescribing proper medication. They're making you go through all of these channels. So people are completely cut off.
Right.
And the CDC said, it's inhumane and unsafe to do that. Like, to just cut somebody off of your medication people who have been on morphine or oxycodone or whatever they're on, fentanyl patches, they've been on those for years for legitimate pain issues. And it's the only way that they can live a productive life. In some cases, it's the only way they can live. And so to be cut off from that, the CDC said, it had some really unintended consequences because the doctors were cutting them off. People were actually dying from the withdrawals because it's dangerous to do that. And like I said, when you've been on it for so long, you have a dependence. It's not the same as addiction, and a lot of people get it confused, but your body becomes dependent on any medication that you take for a good length of time. So it doesn't matter what it is. So, but unfortunately, with these types of medications, though, that dependence is strong and the withdrawals can be very severe. There's a website that's actually popped up called Doctors of Courage. They discuss, injustice against medical professionals and chronic pain patients in response to this. There are many doctors who want to be able to treat their patients. They feel their hands are tied. This is not something that they support. There's also been people-driven community called Patients Not Addicts, and they actually have a Facebook page called Patients Not Addicts. But also, if you hashtag it on YouTube, Twitter, any of the social media, you'll see tons and tons of people sharing their stories. There are people who actually have celebration of life parties with their family and friends because they're going to commit suicide the next day, and everyone supports the decision because they know how much pain this person is in, and it's the only escape. And I know a lot of people can't even
That's so
comprehend
sad,
that
but
level of pain. It's so sad. But a lot of people can't just even comprehend that level of pain, and how, these people are not addicted. They're trying to get treatment for real illnesses that are causing them 24-hour-a-day pain that is debilitating in their life that they can never escape with other methods. Sometimes medication is the line of treatment. So
yeah, sometimes it just is. It
mhm.
is what it is, and it's really sad that they can't get what they need. My heart really goes out to the people that can't get what they need.
Yeah, I think so too, and I feel really fortunate that I wasn't getting the same reaction when I came off of mine, because my treatments were starting to work. But a lot of people are not that fortunate. My doctor did just cut me off in a way. I mean, I cut myself off really, but he was starting to not prescribe at all and was sending people to pain management, which I decided not to go to uh, because I know how bad it is there. And I'm not saying people shouldn't go, so no haters. If your pain clinic is great for you. I'm happy for you. But the majority of experiences that people are having that I'm hearing about has not been positive. And the other thing is this, a lot of people say, these people should not be given these types of drugs for so long because it causes addiction. There is a difference between addiction and dependence. Dependence means that your body has had this drug for so long, and by suddenly going off it, you can suffer things like a heart attack. You can have a stroke. Your body is used to this chemical, and it wouldn't be any different if you were to just suddenly stop taking an antidepressant that you've been taking for a long time. Or there are plenty of medications that have that warning that other people are not so upset about. So addiction is when you abuse the medication and you're using it for reasons that it's not intended for. So if you're using a drug to feel better emotionally, or to get a high off of it, that would be an addiction. And so I don't think people understand the difference. And everyone who's been on medication for a year or two, of course they're dependent, and that doesn't mean that they're addicted. So hopefully
Right.
that message will be out there.
Hopefully now people can understand the difference in dependency and addiction.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, and we need to be getting that message out there. There's too much of a stigma on addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all addiction, and it's
Exactly.
not all addiction.
And yes, there are people that do say, okay, I started on pain medication from my doctor and it escalated into an addiction. And then I went to street drugs. And that's always a risk. What are you supposed to do, though? Not treat patients because of the risk? Like you just said, it's a risk going to any doctor. They could malpractice, is something that happens all the time. And the doctor's job is to monitor the person who is taking the medication. And if addiction becomes an issue, there are things that they can do to help that patient, but you can't just ignore the pain because of a risk that probably is not going to happen with most people. And I mean, there's pre-screening they can do too. Most people who are addicted or can get addicted have addictive tendencies, and they already know that they do because they've had issues with other things in the past. And that's why they ask you, do you have issues? Have you ever had issues with alcohol and things of that nature? But even then, you can just start out as a person who's never had an issue and it escalates. And it's an unfortunate thing when that happens. But again, you cannot send people home with cancer and not treat their pain. You cannot send people home from surgery and give them Tylenol. And that's what's happening now.
That's
It's
crazy.
unbelievable to me. It is. My experience with pain, fortunately, in the beginning, unfortunately, it was horrible. My pain started in my joints and mostly my elbows and my knees, and then it started to go to my small joints. And it was so severe that I couldn't do household chores. I couldn't push a vacuum. I couldn't hold a laundry basket. I couldn't drive because the pedals hurt too much on my feet. I couldn't walk half a mile for the same reason, the joints in my like my ankles and stuff. I lost strength to like 45%. So I would drop just like a bowl, just like picking up a bowl, I would drop it and it would shatter on the floor. I needed a seat. This is kind of embarrassing because it made me feel like such an old lady, but I needed a seat for the toilet because I had to raise it up because I couldn't sit all the way down and stand back up without it hurting my knees so badly.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I couldn't go up and down my stairs. I couldn't write a letter because, my hands hurt so bad. It hurt to wash my own hair some days. So, and I never went out. So there was a lot of times like my husband would have to do the grocery shopping for us. And for a long time, that was the only thing I ever did was go out to do the grocery shopping. Other than that, I did not go out, well, unless to go to a doctor's appointment. My pain was so debilitating that they decided to put me in a clinical trial for another type of Benlysta to see if that would work for me. And they immediately put me on oxycodone, which most people would agree is one of the higher ones, one of the more severe medications. And I do believe I really needed it at the time. But after a time, I did notice that I was starting to take more of it to in order to handle the same amount of pain. So a tolerance builds up, and then there's only so high the doctor can go before they're like, I don't know about this anymore. Like there's that limit, and it was because that limit had already been put in place by the time I was, getting it. And then there came the situation where I was so depressed because even with the pain medication, I was still having issues, but the pain wasn't so bad. I did have a situation where my depression was so bad. We talked about this in the last episode where I used it to try to end my life. So I believe there needs to be regular checkups on somebody's mental health while they're taking them too, because depending on who you are, sometimes these medications can make you really sleepy and very depressed. With me, it was the complete opposite. So medications really do affect people in different ways. So like I said, my doctor was like, okay, we're going to stop prescribing this in a couple months. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go off it anyways because of what happened. It was all sort of happening around the same time, and I just stopped refilling my prescription and didn't take up the offer to go to pain management. And it was strange because my pain actually got better. And a lot of chronic pain patients hate it when the doctors say, if you've been on pain medication for so many years, there's a chance that your pain will actually improve when you go off the meds. Because after a while, they kind of turn on you. I don't believe that happens with everyone, but I've heard that.
Yeah, my neurologist said that also. He said it's not good to go on the pain medicines all the time.
Right. And I know that there's some people who would argue against that, like feverishly, because they would just be like, there's no way I would be able to just go off my medication and feel better. I believe there are certain types of pain that are constant and treatment's not going to help them. There are certain diseases where treatment is just not going to help the pain.
Definitely.
But in my case, my treatment was working, so that may have contributed to that as well. And I did start to get better and better without the pain medication. And the more I moved and the more I walked, I noticed if I don't move, I get really bad. So I have to sometimes get up and push myself because I know eventually that will keep my pain from getting worse. I do have flare-ups with my lupus and the inflammation will get higher. And when that happens, the pain will get bad in my knees and my elbows mostly, but I have not had an issue with all of those things that I mentioned before. I can do all of those things now without any issue, even when I'm having a flare. It's nothing like it used to be. And I am one of the very lucky ones because I know that is not true for most people.
Our special guest today is Ellen Bellens from Belgium, and she's going to be speaking on B12 deficiency. Ellen, how did you find out you were B12 deficient?
Well, after I give birth to my second baby, my situation, my health get very bad, and I had problems with my nerves. I felt like my brain was shutting down. The doctors always thought that it was mentally, but I was very sure that it was not in my head. Also because my grandmother was diagnosed with.
So what tipped you off though that it might be B12? Did you do your own research or like how did you figure that out?
When I was 16, I was diagnosed with fibro,
Mm-hmm.
and I went on a lot of fibro groups to ask what treatment would help me to feel better. And then out of the blue, someone told me maybe you have to check your B12 because there are a lot of people with fibro that have B12 deficiency. It doesn't matter if your test is normal, you can still have it. It can be diagnosed on the symptoms that you have. B12 deficiency is an autoimmune disease, and like many people know, with autoimmune disease, they mostly get their blood test back normal.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you had some permanent damage, right?
Yeah, my nerve system is totally damaged, and I have chronic pain because of the nerve damage through my entire body. And also, I have a bit of brain damage that caused me to have memory problems and concentration problems.
So basically, if they had diagnosed you sooner, you could have lived a normal life, but because they didn't, you are now permanently dealing with these issues. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if they would diagnose me sooner, then I would have a normal life. I would still go to work. My life would be totally different.
Is that the only serious damage it can do, like damage in your legs or, nerve damage? Is there other types of damage that it can do? Like you talked about mentally. What types of mental damage can it do?
It can give you a dimension, and also you can get psychotic.
Psychotic?
Psychotic, yeah.
I know you had mentioned schizophrenia also.
Yes.
And bipolar disorder, is that because you had said that you were originally diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Yes, but now the doctor not seem to see any signs anymore.
Which is amazing, because how many people are misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder and being treated with
Antidepressant pills.
yeah, right? Mood stabilizers, and maybe it's just a B12 deficiency. Not to say that you people out there with bipolar disorder should stop taking your meds. I'm just saying.
No, you should talk to
Keep
your
taking your
doctors.
meds, but talk to your doctor. Yeah.
Talk to your doctor about it.
But basically, Ellen, what you're saying is that people should not necessarily assume that when they're diagnosed with something, it's always the correct diagnosis. You had a feeling, did you have a feeling this whole time that something wasn't right, that your diagnosis was wrong?
Yes, I really thought that they were mistaken because I was not getting better at all. I was only getting worse.
So they had put you on the meds for bipolar and you just got worse.
Yeah, I get much worse till the point that I could not get out of bed anymore.
So most people wouldn't think to have their B12 even checked. So if it came back negative, how would they know that they actually might have a problem with being B12 deficient?
Well, my doctor diagnosed me on all the symptoms I have. I had 2 pages of symptoms, and there were like 90% of the symptoms of B12 deficiency.
So, what are like some of the major symptoms that people might want to look out for?
That will be the nerve damage, and that can be burning hands and electric shocks in every part of the body. Shooting pains.
Does it affect your balance at all?
Yes, sometimes people can fall unexpectedly. Also, I have problem with my speech. Sometimes I didn't know the words to say. I forgot words and I had problem to speak them. Also had problem to read and type words.
So, what would happen if you were like writing something or you were typing? Would you get words mixed up?
I write them double because when I write them I forgot what I write. Then it starts all over again. I can type the same word 30 times.
You were also talking about dementia a little bit. And I remember us talking before. We do know Ellen, for the rest of you
Yes.
who are listening. There was a situation in your kitchen that I think you might want to tell everybody about.
Yeah, it was not a fun adventure. One day I was about to cook and then I get problems with my memory again. And before I know, I just went a bit in the living room, and before I know, I went back in the kitchen, and my kitchen was on fire. Good, I had a big fast reaction, and I can put it off because the fire was gas, and you know what happens with gas when fire comes.
Yes. Oh my
So I
goodness.
was very lucky, and that was also the moment that I was start to search what was wrong with me.
Right.
Where can people get more information on B12 deficiency?
Yeah, it's from Sally Pollock. She is doing awareness in USA. I read her book, and it was great.
Okay, good. So we'll make sure that our listeners have access to that information. And
Is there anything else you would like people to know about B12 deficiency, Ellen?
I want people to know that if you suffer from problems with your nerves, that you have to be fast to get treatment because it can get you permanent damage and even that far that you can get paralyzed and be in a wheelchair. And also people can die from this illness, so it's just not a vitamin, it's serious.
It's very serious. It sounds very serious.
I would like people to know that if the doctor tells you that you have this diagnosis, make sure that is the right diagnosis, because it took me 3 diagnoses to get the real one. A lot of illnesses have almost the same symptoms like B12 deficiency. It can be Alzheimer's, Parkinson, also autism, MS, fibro, and chronic fatigue syndrome, and many more like B12 deficiency. So always make sure that you're not wrong.
So I just want to thank you, Ellen, for joining us and in sharing your experience with B12 deficiency. Hopefully it will put some awareness out there and make people think a little bit about their own diagnoses and if it may be something that they're dealing with. So shifting gears a bit, we are so excited to finally announce the winner of our premier launch party. We basically asked you all to show us some love on all our media pages, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. And we are proud to announce the winner is not only one person, but two. Two of you really stood out. And honestly, it was so close, we decided to gift you both some unified swag. The winners are Don Clark and Amy Beth. So congratulations to you both. And we'll be reaching out to you via your social media accounts. And thank you so much for spreading our name and getting us out there. We really, really do appreciate it. And we're going to show you some love back.
The mantra for this week is chronic pain is no joke. It's every day waking up not knowing how you're going to feel. Lady Gaga.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and just remember, we are stronger together.
Take care, guys.
Unified through chronic and mental illness can be found at anchor.fm/unified. There you can find all social media links as well as other ways to listen.